and take it all. He can draw and take it all because a draw is all he needs. And if Hikaru Nakamura wins, well, then we go to Armageddon. And once again, either player can win. So it's interesting. It's a chess game where we're playing for 4 results. I didn't think that could happen.
It's a chess game, but Magnus also loves playing those odds. And by taking this draw, he's banked in Armageddon. We should mention that. Magnus is guaranteed to play at least the next game, maybe another, for a shot at the finals. Hikaru, it's all about here and now. He has to play on the front foot. He has to use that word that he dropped earlier, aggression. And we see another Queen's Gambit. I'm very surprised we've gone into this. We did see that sneak peek of Hikaru Nakamura looking at the computer, looking at what he should have done in the previous game, in game 4 of this Catalan. But Magnus switches up the order this time, switches the variation. He opens the position by taking on c4. This is known as the most rock-solid variation as black. But the game is guaranteed to go on for a long time. And that is what Hikaru is hoping for.
Rock solid is not what you want to hear as Hikaru Nakamura at the moment, but he's playing quickly, he's playing confidently, these moves getting blitzed out. Players, of course, they are very, very familiar with this by now. It's an opening we've seen so many times in the Esports World Cup and in this match. But now it's a must-win situation. We're going to start seeing those risks. This might be well understood, but we're going to move into unfamiliar territory. We're going to be taking those 50-50 moves, those risky punts, rolls of the dice, to see if we can catch our opponents off guard.
And a widening of the eyes from Magnus Carlsen as Hikaru allows him to double the pawns. Black's most principled move here, the theoretical move, this is still a well-known position, is bishop takes bishop. We would see a bishop trade on f4, white recapturing towards the center. Magnus actually says no. That would not only re-establish white's control over the center, though, it would open up the g-file for potential attacks later on. And that's a long story that has a lot of history behind it, that variation, but Magnus doesn't want any risk here at all.
A slightly cagey approach by Magnus, just making sure that there are no imbalances in the position, so keeps the pawn formation as is, not allowing those open lines. But now this sort of, again, gives the option to Hikaru, right? He could get out of this trade. He could trade on d6 on his own self and say, you know what, that d6 pawn might come under fire. But if I'm white and I'm Hikaru Nakamura, I'm thinking, how do I keep as much tension on the board? How do I keep as many pieces on the board? This is my final chance to play for the win. There might not be something direct, but I want those bishops alive.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And also, if you take the bishop on d6, your queen's on the c-file. You want to open up the half-open c-file for black. It means that play becomes quite natural. It's not necessarily advantageous, but it becomes really obvious what the immediately plans are for black. So what do you do instead? Not sure. But also, where do you move that bishop? Maybe g5? Are we risking trading it for a knight? It does get taken on the next move, but there were some big questions to be answered there.
And Magnus is the one to blink first with that trade. We talked about the doubled f-pawns. White has a lot of grip on the dark squares, a lot of grip on the center, but also a semi-open g-file. And it might not be relevant now. It might not look like White is going to brew up any attack, but watch out for a bit later as Hikaru now about to defend the front f-pawn. All pawns on dark squares with the light squared bishop to complement them. This one, I'm very surprised by Magnus's decisions, allowing White all these central pawns.
You know, with all the trades that have happened on f4 and c3, you see a flank pawn moving towards the center of the board, controlling more squares, opening up the g line for one rook, opening up the b line for the other rook. So quick decisions taken by Magnus. He's got to have something direct in his mind, and he shows his cards there. b5 is what he wanted. A trade on that line would open up the game to further trades. And let's not forget, after pawn takes pawn, if the rooks come off the board, the black queen slides over to a beautiful spot lining up with the black bishop.
Here we go. Hikaru tries to break the structure. If we do see a trade on the c4 square, black is left with a backward c-pawn. It's very committal from Magnus Carlsen. Eval bar shows small edge for white. I think this is a dream for Hikaru in most chess circumstances, but to win on demand, still a big ask.
And of course, the bishop defending the pawn on b5, so you could technically take the pawn on a4, and there's no immediate counter. But of course, in the long run, that's just a big weakness. With the major pieces, there should be a way to recapture. So we're not too worried about that at this moment in time.
He takes towards the center. That's normally the way. Give a top player 2 options. They'll usually capture towards the center. And that's because this time the black bishop is able to install itself very nicely, centralized in the middle of the board. But the black c-pawn isolated, the black a-pawn isolated. It does look like a small advantage for Hikaru.
It's very interesting, this position is, with the pawn formation that white has right now, and it looks very solid. You control all those dark squares, but Magnus, he's got the control on the e4 and the d5 square. In fact, Hikaru is inviting the knight to jump to the center of the board, attacking the queen with tempo. Magnus, though, not rushing with that. He's trying to calculate what happens, how would the follow-up be, and also some better options. Maybe get the rook to the open line, improve the position of the queen.
Yeah, very interesting, this provocative move there from Hikaru, hoping for a queen trade, hoping for the black knight to leap forward. It actually retreats, and not only would the black knight step back, the queen does the same. And he's kind of decentralized the black knight in the process. Watch out, there might be the white knight jumping towards the g5 square, the white queen on a nice diagonal, and that has just been prevented.
But now we're in a position where if you need to sit here and come up with plans as white, you can see there's a target on c7. There's an open b file potentially for you to try and take. The knight on d7 is defending against it, but there's a potential outpost, a fairly juicy one on e5 that you might want to take in the long run as well. None of these are game-winning strategies, but they're all very concrete ideas that you can see just from looking at the position for a couple of moments. So from a clarification point of view, it feels like Hikaru now has an easier time than he did maybe 5 moves ago.
I feel you're absolutely right on that. But I think if you have to win, you have to make some breakthroughs, some big committal moves. You need to find those concrete lines. It's about checks, captures, and threats. No checks on the board, no captures on the board. I do see a move for Hikaru that creates a threat on the board that I'd have on my radar. That e-pawn moving forward, e4, hitting the bishop, creating this big center. Yes, it's committal. Those pawns can be attacked, but they also come with ideas of their own, right? You gain so much space, and I wonder if we might see that play out.
Yeah, I think Hikaru in a must-win situation, very tempted. I think usually he wouldn't push that because it is very committal and could backfire due to how weakening it is. The white pawn's very loose there, waving to the audience back from our commentary booth. Instead, he plays a very non-committal move, very natural move. He sidesteps with his rook, but now black is ready. Black is one move away from striking out, pushing that backward c-pawn to c5. A trade of that pawn would spell the beginning of a simplification process. Maybe now is the moment. The white queen is slid across to attack the a6 pawn, but that one doesn't look like the most relevant pawn either way. Magnus, small window of opportunity here for him, maybe.
Will he sacrifice the pawn for that activity to free up his pieces with c5? But that's a big decision to make. When you need only a draw to go through, you're basically creating a lifelong imbalance, and then you have to go on to prove your initiative for the pawn that's given up. He does have another option. He could push that pawn one step forward and then think about going c5 on the next move.
Pawn to a5, save the one the white queen is looking at. Very, very natural. But, that would give Hikaru again the opportunity to push forward in the center. And 6 minutes plays 6 minutes 20. Magnus sacrifices a pawn. Hikaru reacts on the camera there.
Big decision. Big one from Magnus.
Absolutely spot on. And you can tell from the facial expression that you just saw from Hikaru, he's going, okay, this is interesting. Maybe he wasn't expecting that as a default response. Let's do a quick bit of calculation. 6 minutes and 5 seconds apiece on the clock at the moment, so no major time advantage for either player to speak of right now. This could be one of those scenarios, and it's very scary, where you say, okay, if you're going to let me take the pawn, I'm going to have to test it out. I'm going to have to take it and see what happens.
And talking of seeing what happens, let's see what might happen. We're looking at the analysis board, actually in sync. Hikaru ends up playing this move. Queen takes pawn, and now Magnus has multiple options. He can push forward with his pawn, creating a passer. That c-pawn, super strong. And the white queen on a6, almost like Magnus's queen on a6 earlier in the day, could well get trapped. There's ideas of the black rook sliding across to a8 and picking off the white a4 pawn at the very minimum. And there we go. We actually do see this come to pass. Black with a big threat of rook to a8. Hikaru needs to get his queen out, evacuate her ASAP.
These flank pawns, when it comes to queen attacking them, are like a mousetrap. We've seen it happen with the b pawn, and we see it happen with the a pawn. You invite the queen over, pick up material. The moment they do that, you shut the mousetrap door and say there's no way home. And right now, you have to be careful about not losing that queen. An idea that Hikaru used to win that game too, but right now Magnus is the one threatening it. This will be revenge at a meta level if he gets it done.
Exactly. Massive momentum shift either way. Magnus willing to throw a pawn away just to create this very powerful pawn on c4 and to try and trap the white queen. Hikaru wasn't expecting this, that's for sure.
And for the first time in this all-important game, Hikaru Nakamura is about to go over a minute below Magnus Carlsen as well. So they were more or less neck and neck for quite a lot of the middle game. Now we're settling in for a deep think, and Magnus will be keeping half an eye on that, looking to use it if we get into an endgame.
This is Magnus playing with fire, you know, needing only a draw. He could have held on to his material. He didn't have to do it. He's voluntarily given it. And there's no direct path to equality here. Yes, you're threatening the rook move, and maybe if white's not careful, there might be a direct path to equality. The rook shuffling around on the A line and the B line and the A line, you know, causing some problems to that white queen. This is some big brain chess here going on. I mean, just giving up a pawn, pushing your own pawn to c4, playing for initiative, incredible stuff.
And there's a lot beneath the surface here, a lot of calculation that needs to be done. How does Hikaru get his queen out? How does he save his extra pawn in the process? A few big questions. He does find a safe square for Her Majesty there, but given a question mark by the computer, eval bar sliding in Magnus's favor, the queen is forced away, forced back. She's done a lot of steps, a lot of work in the last few moves, but it might be Magnus's queen that's about to come out. The black pieces swarming forward.
And he puts it at a beautiful square because it might look like he's only eyeing that a4 pawn. And look at the way Magnus just leans in. You know, he's smelling it, he's sensing it. The rook can double down on that A line. You've given up a pawn but opened a file to get to your opponent's pawn. He first defends c4, rook a6 coming up next. Magnus going to target that extra pawn.
Now you can see that white pawn. Yes, it's a pass pawn on a4, but it's so difficult without anything else to back it up. The major pieces for Magnus Carlsen, so straightforward. In addition, we've got a discovered attack on the e4 pawn as well, which just got pushed, which is why you see d5 to try and prevent the queen from just picking that up. And Hikaru's queen swings back across to h3.
Wow, Magnus reacted to that one. Unexpected, the longest possible move in chess. A queen sliding from one side of the board to the other, but hitting the black knight in the process. Big question for Magnus. Does he put his knight, does he adopt it on a passive square, defensive square, or does he try to leap it forward into the white camp? That's the more ambitious one. A more defensive one would be back near the black king, for example. Magnus, he's going to show us a lot in this next move. What is his mood? Is he going to try and bank this with the draw? Is he going to go forward on the offensive?
Knight on f8, there's no mate. Knight on d3, and you're free. Which choice will he make in this one? Will he be free to play for a win, Magnus Carlsen, or will he make sure that at least one of his pieces stays close to that king, you know, just being a great defender there? And I'm going to point out, wherever the knight moves, Hikaru will pick up the d5 pawn. Well, he chooses a different route there, comes to the center of the board. Now that it's attacked, knight e4 incoming. But there are tricks in the position. The white queen is eyeing the black rook. Rook takes pawn on the board. Queen takes rook, queen takes rook, queen takes rook.
Yeah, big problem here. If the black queen had moved away, the white queen would have swooped in and captured on c8. That's almost like checkers. Let's just do a quick backtrack on our analysis board. The green board on the right of your screens. Queen takes d5 here. Huge blunder avoided by Magnus Carlsen because queen takes rook on c8. Check. And queen takes a6. Both black rooks fall in one fell swoop.
That would have been 2 rooks lost for 1. And of course, Magnus avoids all those dangers. He goes rook takes pawn himself, but this is going into proper blitz territory now. Hikaru Nakamura brings out his knight. Material is level. 4 pawns versus 4 pawns. But that's c4, which is just 3 steps away from becoming a queen. Tying down Hikaru's rook on c1. This is about to get tricky. I think it's advantage Magnus just simply because of that passer.
And the reason we just explored on the analysis board is also the reason e5 was given a question mark, because you could have actually just taken the pawn. The same tactic would have been on the board. So anyway, it came to pass. We saw what could have been. And now that looks like a big blunder. Knight f1 from Hikaru. This could be huge.
Magnus has blundered. The white knight can now retreat to f1. The black knight has pinned itself, and this wins the black knight. Magnus has blundered. He's going to react. He's just lost a piece in one move.
He can't believe it. And the crowd, they're supporting Hikaru. They know he's about to win. He's found the move. And now the queen can jump into the attack, triple down on that knight. You pin it and you win it, and Magnus Carlsen cannot believe it.
Wow, the Black Knight doomed, tied up in knots. Magnus is reacting to the crowd. I think he can hear what's going on. So much applause now. Hikaru Nakamura is about to strike back on demand and force Armageddon.
Team Falcons fans there going absolutely wild. And Hikaru Nakamura, he's about to get this done. He is taking the world #1 to an Armageddon.
He's won a night, he's done the hard work. There are no tricks in this position. Hikaru wants to go up to the top of the board, trade off queens. Magnus is about to resign. He's going to confirm the Armageddon. There we go.
Nakamura pounces when he sees the tactics in his favor, the persistence and the pressure in the position, paying off for the Team Falcons player, and he bites back on demand to force an Armageddon in this second semi-final of the day. The world #1 and world #2 in a best-of-6 semi-final. Well, they can't be separated in regulation time, so it goes to